Okay, great. Thank you so much. My name is Ida Odeka. I am an environmental conservationist, and I met Bashir, who invited me to have this lecture today through my postgraduate degree. We schooled together at the University of Nairobi, and there I pursued a master's degree in project planning and management. So I've been practicing environmental science for quite a long time, and climate change is a passionate topic to me. So having been invited to lead this is of great pleasure. And I hope to everyone else that you are also here because you are either passionate or interested to learn more about climate and climate change. And today we'll also analyze the impacts of climate change. So we'll start by understanding what climate is. And I don't know if I'm going to ask people to random person to let us know if they have an understanding of what climate change is.
Yes, my name is Beatrice Sami. I'm from Kenya. If I can define what climate is that it is an average weather condition for a period of 30 to 35 years, when the average weather condition measured over a period of 30 to 35 years. Yes, thank you.
Yes, great. Yeah, thank you so much for that. You've done an elaborate, basically that's the simple understanding of what climate is. So when we accumulate or measure weather conditions for a period of between 30 to 35 years, we're able to determine what, climatic conditions of a particular geographical area is or are. So having said that, climate is a very complex phenomena, mainly because it is affected or influenced by different aspects. For example, the oceans, the biosphere, the cryosphere, and basically the solid earth where we live in. So all these parameters contribute to climatic conditions that we experience on the earth's surface. And in view of all this, for us to understand what climate change will be, is basically the planet, which when I talk about planet, we mean here the Earth. When we consider the energy budget of the Earth, is that the short waves that we receive from the sun needs to be balanced by the outgoing long waves that are radiated by the Earth. So if at all this is not in balance, there will be a difference in temperature levels. And as we see now, there has been higher temperature levels because the amount of short waves radiated to the Earth by the sun is not balanced by the long waves that are emitted back from the Earth, therefore causing a warming conditions on the Earth atmosphere that causes climate change. So having understood that climate is measured weather conditions over a period of 30 to 35 years, we will jump into what, climate change in this case is. And basically, it's the persistent shifts of average weather conditions that exceed, the common or the normal climate variability. So there can be shifts, either long or short shifts in temperature conditions measured over a period of time. Those shifting conditions will create climate change. And climate is naturally variable. There are conditions that so when we get into the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, There has been some data that suggests that increases occurred in average temperature at the Earth's surface as much as 1 degree Celsius since the mid-1980s. And since then, since basically we started the agrarian revolution and industrialization, there has been quite a big shift on what climate was before the 80s and what climatic conditions are now after industrialization. So having understood that, there is a term called climatic change. This was a term that was proposed by the World Meteorological Organization in 1966. However, it encompassed climatic variability for a period of longer than 10 years, but did not consider, these changes, is climatic change a variable that is caused by, is it human induced or natural factor? That was not considered when, what WMO described what climatic changes are. However, in the 1970s, the term climate change was replaced by, climatic change, so that, so that there is more focus onto what anthropogenic causes of climate changes are. And this has had us have conversations during, various UN conferences and even through the UN Framework on Conventional Climate Change, where there's always discussions on what is causing climate change, what are the mitigation, and what are the adaptation measures. So having understood that, we will go through the causes of climate change. And I think here I'll also maybe ask someone to randomly just mute and let us know what they think or what they know are the causes of climate change. I'm not sure if someone is able to unmute and speak.
Thank you. Let me just try. I think there's a lot of emission of carbon. There's a lot of carbon emission due to maybe the industrial emissions, the motor emissions. We are emitting more carbon than, say, 100 years ago.
Yeah, thank you for that. So carbon is one greenhouse gas that has led to the differences in the climatic conditions that we've had for a long time. Ever since there was, industrialization, there has been various activities, human-induced, that actually emit CO2 into the atmosphere. But other than that, there are also natural factors that also contribute to emission of CO2. And those examples are like volcanic eruptions, where anytime there's a volcanic eruption, there's emission of CO2, there's emission of sulfur dioxide, and other gases, other greenhouse gases that cause or lead to warming of the atmosphere. So causes, there are both natural causes and there are also human-induced causes. We'll just look at that next. So we'll take the first focus onto human-induced climate causes of climate change. And the first one is burning of fossil fuel. I think there's in our lives, each and every one of us in any instance of their life has had an interaction with fossil fuels. Either if you own a car or a motorbike, and you either use petrol or you either use diesel. These are fossil fuels that whenever it is burnt, whenever they are consumed, they release CO2 into the atmosphere. Burning of coal, oil, all these release CO2 that when they are And when we have accumulation of too much carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, or mainly the greenhouse gases, they end up forming a layer, ozone layer, that inhibits long waves that we talked about earlier from radiating from the Earth's surface. So if, in other words, if the sun radiates heat into the Earth, this same heat needs to be radiated out of the Earth's atmosphere through the long waves. And in this case, a lot of CO2 and other greenhouse gases end up forming a layer on the Earth called the ozone layer, where the long waves cannot be radiated out of the Earth's atmosphere, causing a heating condition that will end up raising, Earth's temperatures. So burning fossil fuels is one contributor to climate change. Another contributor is deforestation. And this is mainly because forests absorb a lot of CO2. And whenever green plants absorbing CO2 for them to, make food, they also emit, rather take in this CO2 into the soil. So plants are able to capture CO2 from the Earth's surface and basically store it into the soil. If we cut down these trees, some of them will decompose and end up releasing back the CO2 into the atmosphere. So that is how deforestation leads to CO2. In some instances, deforestation is mainly done to provide charcoal and fuel. And whenever you burn wood, one of the major gas that is emitted is CO2, which is a major contributor of greenhouse gases. Another cause of human induced climate change conditions is industrial emissions. And this is mainly through the factories and manufacturing plants that we have. So there are so many manufacturing industries, both, in cement, iron, steel, electronics, especially plastics, and even clothing. Yes, so the next item is on waste management and landfill. And anytime these organic components or organic waste is released without being recycled, they decompose, and in the process of decomposition, they release methane. And if this methane is not tapped or used efficiently for gas, it ends up emitted into the atmosphere, leading into one more greenhouse gas emitted into the atmosphere. And like I explained before, we now know how greenhouse gases contribute into warming of the Earth's surface. Another human-induced causes of climate change is mainly through the transport sector. This is mainly because most, if not all, modes of mechanical transport is, consume either diesel or petrol, which are actually fossil fuels that we spoke about previously. And whenever these fossil fuels are burnt, there's release of nitrogen oxide and CO2. Both are greenhouse gases. Again, we know how now greenhouse gases contribute to the warming of the atmosphere. When we come to natural causes of climate change, these are basically factors that occur naturally, and we almost do not have any, we cannot control it. It's the acts of nature. And one of them is volcanic eruptions. Though in the most recent times, we have not had any, especially in Kenya, maybe in other countries, but so far from my knowledge, I have not heard of any volcanic eruptions that have occurred recently. But if any of these happen, there's emission of CO2, sulfur dioxide, and other gases that also contribute to greenhouse gases. There's solar radiation variations. Also, this has not been recorded in the recent years. However, if at all there are solar cycles, they affect the Earth's climate. If the sun's energy is not stable, then definitely it means if the warming, if the rays are harsh, then there would be, harsher conditions on the Earth's surface, but there hasn't been any solar variations that we have, experienced to say that, there were any causes of climate change contributed to by solutions. And then there are ocean currents and orbital changes. I think this is quite common, especially here in Kenya, where we either experience an El Nino or a La Nina event where there is too much rain, especially during the El Nino period, that cause flooding, and such kind of disasters. When we go to impacts of climate change, there is one on rising temperatures. So rising temperatures have so far caused lots of, heat waves, wildfires, and even these wildfires would lead to desertification if not controlled. The last decade, which is from 2011 to 2020, was basically the warmest record that we've had. And since the 1980s, the Earth's surface has been warmer. And it is because of this that the Paris Agreement, always indicates that we need to have either mitigation or adaptation measures so that we are not, in the near decade, we are not contributing to the increase of Earth's temperature or the atmospheric temperature. So I think from my own experience, if I would basically get to a story from me, is I come from a town called Oyugis here in Kenya. It's on the western part of Kenya. And growing up, we could always predict, the short rains when they would start and approximate that to when we need to start cultivating or preparing our land for growing crops. That has been fluctuating lately, that has been fluctuating lately a lot. Right now, we cannot say, let's start, growing our crops at the end of February. We have to wait until we see the rains pouring. So until possibly this year, the rains started pouring back in my home mid-March. So that is the time when we can, we can monitor, see the levels of rain that are expected, and then we start, preparing land to start the initial stages of the season. So before, it was early, it was easier for our parents to predict, when to start the cropping, when to start preparing land. Now we have to wait until we see, we monitor, and also hear from the meteorological department on when to start, expecting rains. So coming back to the point of rising temperatures, this has caused variations in, what point in time you will receive long rains or receive short rains. And also it is determined by where the geographical location of where you come from. And then there has been extreme weather events, severe droughts, severe flooding, storms and hurricanes. I think storms and hurricanes are mostly, I hear them experienced mostly in the West, that is in the United States. Here in Kenya, we mainly experience extreme drought conditions and sometimes even extreme flooding, especially last year. So because of the different, because of this kind of extreme weather conditions, the agricultural sector is really affected. You cannot almost have the same kind of harvest you had possibly 20 years ago, depending on rainfall. Right now, you have to include technology into your agricultural practices, either contribute to do irrigation or do greenhouses to be able to, get meaningful harvest. And then there has been rising sea levels. This is mainly caused by the melting glaciers from the mountains. In Kenya, our most ice-capped mountain is Mount Kenya. And there has been differences in the levels of, ice caps way back and what we have now. There has been also loss of biodiversity. I think this has mainly affected birds, especially migrating birds. There has been instances where for example, back in my home in the swampy areas, there used to be habitats that were known for a particular birds. So they are called gray-crowned cranes. So these gray-crowned cranes, we would basically know where to find their nests during their nesting periods. And they were mainly found in swampy areas. So when these swampy places started to be used either for settlements or for farming, it chased away these birds. So they had to look for, an alternative area to get their habitat. So loss of biodiversity mainly affect birds and other animals that are dependent on a particular conditions offered by a particular area. In this case, a swampy place is ideal for gray-crowned cranes. If you do away with that condition, they have to migrate and look for an habitat elsewhere. Sometimes their lives are even threatened. They end up losing their young ones, and that reduces the population of the birds. And then on the social impacts, there's food insecurity. Yeah, if you depend on rain-fed agriculture and rain patterns are no longer sufficient, then definitely you're going to have poor harvest at the end of the day. Also, there's water scarcity that is mainly caused by drought conditions. There are health issues, especially in regards to skin infections because of too much heat waves. There are also vector-borne diseases in terms of during flooding, it creates an environment for mosquitoes, and that can actually lead to malaria cases. Yeah, and then there's displacement and migration. Anytime there's a flood or there's a drought condition, people move to find better areas to live. And then there are also economic impacts. Whenever there's reduced agricultural productivity, you expect for a farmer, they will expect low yields and therefore little income. In terms of infrastructure damage, we've seen flooding causing, a whole bridge is swept away because of flooding. Yeah, and there's also increased costs. Whenever there is a poor harvest, it means demand of an item goes up. And when this happens, everything else is going to, prices for things will skyrocket and food will become expensive. Yeah, leading to, increased costs of commodities. And then there's loss of livelihoods, especially to farmers, fishers, and other vulnerable communities that, rely on income from either fishing or agriculture. They are not able to sustain a good livelihood whenever there are extreme weather conditions or extreme climatic conditions. So that is it. So thank you so much.